Thank you for joining me, everybody. Before I start, I would like to give an acknowledgement of country. So on behalf of those present, I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I also pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia and hope the path towards reconciliation continues to be shared and embraced. As you know, there's a small team of us working on the award. Myself as the director, I've been now the director for the Australian Award since 2018. Having originally been a recipient, back then I would never ever have thought that I would be directing the national awards, but there you go. Hard to predict the future. Been an absolute pleasure to be connected with such brilliant educators across the country, and we've got quite a few of them here today with us, so it's a really special moment. Joining me to manage the awards, I have got a team of two. So Angeline's very super efficient, very prompt and extremely organised, and that's exactly the type of person you want on your team when you're running your national awards, who outlined all these sort of administrative pieces. And those of you that are applying for award, you will be having contact with Angeline. And there's Jen. She's also the awards coordinator and helps manage all the awards in the background as well. Jen is on there. And today we've actually got some past award winners, and these are the recipients of the Australian Award for University Teaching of the Year back from 2018 to last year. So we've got the most recent award winners with us. So we'll have a conversation with them, and I'll be covering a few key things with the award winners. So I'm going to introduce our Australia's most recognised university teachers. So I'm going to start with Katerina Teaiwa. So Katerina was the recipient of the Teaching Excellence Award last year. Katerina is from Australian National University. Katerina got the Teaching Excellence Award in the category of Society and Culture for her outstanding contribution to Pacific studies in Australia and globally. So hello, Katerina. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, morning if you're over in Perth. Then we also have our famous Jack Wang, who posts on social media. Everyone knows Jack, so all those popular posts there in LinkedIn and through other social medias. Jack's from the University of Queensland, and he was awarded the Teaching Excellence Award in the category of Biological Sciences in 2020, and his award was for Citizen Scientists in the Digital Age. So hi Jack, good to have you here with us. In 2019, we actually had a team. The team was the Psychology of Criminal Justice team, and that's comprising of Blake McKimmie. Hi, Blake. Professor Barbara Masser, who's here, and Mark Horswill, but Mark's not, unfortunately, unable to be here with us today. They are also from the University of Queensland, and they were awarded their award in the category of Social and Behavioural Sciences for transforming student learning by using a novel dramatic narrative. In 2018, we had the Teaching Excellence Award was granted to Kevin Larkin. So hello, Kevin. Kevin's from Griffith University, and his award was for transforming how mathematics is taught. So hello, panellists. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. So the way that this is going to work is I've got a couple of questions, 6 questions, and I am going to ask the panellists to respond. And the first question I'm going to ask is, why did you apply for an award? So I'm going to get each of the panellists to respond individually. You'll have a minute to respond, and we'll start with the most recent award recipient. So Katerina, what made you apply for the award?
Thank you so much. And Kamna Maori, Nisambula Vinaka, everyone. Lovely to see you all. I'm zooming in from the unceded lands of the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri people here in Canberra. I just want to pay my respect to their elders, past and present. So why did I apply to the Teaching Award? So I have to be honest and say I had to be persuaded to apply. So I'm a very, very passionate teacher, and I'm a doer. I'm somebody who goes out there and is constantly doing things, organizing things, coordinating things, etc. And so often I'm also a very busy mum, and so I'm multitasking constantly. And even though over the years I've been given amazing feedback about my teaching, the teaching and learning experiences of my students, when it comes to awards, it's usually somebody nominates me or somebody encourages, inspires, and persuades me to go for actual teaching awards. So in this instance, I had a very long conversation with somebody who ended up being my amazing coach and mentor, someone who had a lot of experience supporting educators at the ANU. And she was amazing, and she definitely inspired me to apply because she was able to paint a picture for me that showed how much this award meant both as an individual and for the broader community. So what usually inspires me to go for awards is if I think it's going to make a difference to others as well, and not just to me as an individual. So I started to understand that this would be amazing for broader Pacific Australians, so the broader Pacifica diaspora, which has very low rates of participation in higher education and the tertiary space, and also Pacific Islanders out there across the region. So once she inspired me to do that, we went down an amazing and very rigorous road of applying for this teaching award, and she supported and coached and mentored me, and we got lots of students involved as well. So that's how I ended up applying, and I'm so glad that I did.
Excellent. And we'll get to talk about the impact of the award in a moment, but it's great to hear that you were inspired and supported and coached during the process. And I'm so excited to hear that you had someone that sort of prompted you and pushed you to apply. So well done. I'm now going to go to Kevin, who is perhaps the oldest member that received the award in terms of not in age, but is in oldest as in you got it back in 2018. So Kevin, what made you apply for an award?
Good save, Angela, but you're probably right on both counts. So I was encouraged by the university, as I suspect many of us were, but I think it was an important opportunity to have learning and teaching recognised on a national stage. There's certainly plenty of that for research and things like that. And I suppose on that matter, and Georgine has heard me say this before, if it helps for myself or other recent recipients to write to people about the importance of these awards, it's very disappointing to have to see the level of support sort of dropping for teaching. So Angela, if you think that's helpful, I'm sort of happy to do that. The final reason for applying, it was a good chance to get a positive story about maths education out into the community. So those were the main.
Yes, and we have lots of females now not doing mathematics. So it's really important to have maths being taught in an engaging and encouraging way for at least females to continue on with mathematics. So I continued on with maths because I was inspired by my maths teachers. So I appreciate the effort to make maths interesting, because it can be quite boring. It can be just do the exercises on the left-hand column of the page and then read the book and then the next set of exercises. So well done, Kevin. And yes, we'll definitely take you on to be a mentor for new applicants that are applying for awards. All right, so if we move now on to Jack, we'll ask you, what made you apply for an award?
Yeah, so it's a simple reason. Everyone in my school who is mentoring me has won a national teaching award. So it was kind of just the expectation, well, you should go ahead. But of course, we don't get into teaching thinking we'll get recognized on any level. I mean, there's much easier ways to get recognized, unfortunately. So it was just, I think the institutional support there is really important. And I think Blake and Barbara can probably speak to that as well. At UQ, we've got a really, really strong support network of mentors. And I think that's kind of the reason I tried. I didn't think I would win anything, but I think it's worth trying if people before you have tried. And in terms of the impact, we'll talk about that later on. But it's just my work in science education really relies on having a network of teachers. So this award really allows me to form even more networks, much like the one we're forming today. So I think that's kind of the reason I applied ultimately. But the initial catalyst wasn't me. It was all courtesy of my institution and my mentors.
Thank you so much, Jack. And now we'll go to Blake and then to Barbara. So Blake, and you might want to share this answer together or you might want to do it individually.
Well, we're probably going to say similar things. I don't know, Barbara, do you want to unmute and you can jump in and contribute as well? But probably the initial impetus was much the same as what we've heard from everyone, is we were sort of encouraged to apply. But I think once the idea was sort of put in our heads, it was something we wanted to do. So we got the team award, but it was actually an even much larger team behind us in putting together the course. So we actually had to get a whole film crew together. We had a whole bunch of postgrad students helping us design the course as well and teach with us. And so it really was sort of, we were doing not just for the recognition for ourselves from our peers, but also for the acknowledgement for the whole team, of what they've done. And Barbara, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I mean, absolutely. It wouldn't have happened. None of it would have happened without this massive team behind us. And I think, reflecting what Blake's just said, it was really important for people who are involved in the team who can now sort of cite this award as contributing, as part of their contribution. I mean, I think another reason that we applied for the award was we actually found the process very useful. It forced us to reflect on what we were doing in a way I don't think that we would normally do, and to check our assumptions constantly. We thought, obviously, I don't think it's any secret that it wasn't the first time we'd applied for the award, and I think the first time we thought we were doing pretty well, and we weren't, and we had to go back and think again and try again and recalibrate and work out how we could provide the best evidence of what we were up to. So I think it, sort of reflecting back on it, it was really important as a developmental process as well.
Thank you. So, and that's quite common. A lot of applicants don't receive an award the first time, but the feedback they get is quite valuable, so they can go back and reflect on that feedback and reapply the following year. But it's good to see how the award, has the whole process is actually quite useful, because you're getting feedback from assessors, mentors, coaches, support from your institution, support from your own students, also support from perhaps your learning and teaching sort of portfolio areas as well. But opportunity to deeply reflect what you're doing, why you're doing, what evidence have you gathered to show that there's improvement. And that might eventually help you with networks or putting an issue on a broader scale to be made aware of. So that sort of now leads me to my next question, and that is the impact on winning the award. So I'm going to start again with you, Katerina. What was the impact? You've only just recently got the award. In fact, they're only just announced a couple of months ago. So we keep you quite in the dark for quite some time. So what's been the impact over the last couple of months?
Yes. I have to say the impact has actually been quite overwhelming, in that I didn't realize, I mean, in a way I had, because before that I'd applied to full professor at ANU, and I was successful, and that became a media story. And because I'm the first Pacific woman and the first Indigenous Pacific Islander to achieve the rank of professor at the ANU. So there was already like a media interest in Australia, New Zealand, and the broader Pacific about that. And then when the teaching award happened, it kind of ramped up to a level where if you don't have a personal assistant who can actually answer emails for you, then you start to fall behind on a whole bunch of other things. So there was a huge amount of interest from the region, I have to say. So people, across the Pacific Islands, I was contacted by a lot of media, and also in in New Zealand, Aotearoa, New Zealand, where there's a lot of support for growing Pacific studies and for particularly mainstreaming Pacific studies in the primary and secondary curriculum as well, which is something that I'm very passionate about and want to promote for Australia. I think knowledge of the Pacific is something that ought to be mainstream in our curriculum at all levels, because it is of major national relevance and interest. So the award gave me this platform to actually make that argument and to say it consistently in a variety of contexts, but particularly to media. So there were several ABC stories. It was in the Fiji Times, it was Radio New Zealand, it was in so many different media outlets. And then I have recordings of all of that, which was really useful and helpful as well. But it really helped with this idea that Pacific studies is important. It's not a field that a lot of universities in Australia actually teach, even though they have small and increasing numbers of Pacific Islanders coming through, but they often go and study other fields, other disciplines. So one of the things I'm passionate about, and why I helped establish Australia's first undergraduate program in Pacific Studies, is because I think it's important that everyone knows something about this region that Australia is right in. So this award had an impact in that sense, that suddenly people were like, oh, Pacific Studies, it's a thing, it's really important. Why don't we know more about our region? Why don't we know the geography? How many islands can we actually name other than the ones we've gone on a holiday to? So that's That's been the impact of this award, and it's been wonderful to be able to then push for this mainstreaming. And I've started to talk to the right people about that and see who I need to tap on the shoulder about, mainstreaming this primary, secondary, and tertiary as well. So the impact has been significant.
That's fantastic. It's so good to hear how the national awards have given you a platform to really connect with the right people to make changes for the benefit of everyone in Australia, and even broader than Australia. As you said, the New Zealand are interested and the broader Pacific are interested. So it's fantastic to hear that, Katerina, and I'm hoping that you continue to have the impact that you need to have to put this into the national curriculum. Really, really important. All right, I'm going to move to Jack now. So Jack, what has been and you've just only recently got the award, Katerina. A couple of months you've been the recipient for the 2021 award. Now, Jack, you've had a year of being more than a year of being recognised as the teaching award recipient. So what's the impact been for you?
Yeah, so straight after winning, I think we're still currently in COVID times, but I'm a microbiologist, so I think naturally media attention about a microbiologist winning a teaching award during COVID.
Yes.
But I think the impact is more within academic circles. So I was going back and checking my calendar. I've given 30 invited talks since winning the award. Now, I don't know if that's a lot for all of you. Maybe you give way more than that, but for me, it's like an unprecedented number. So I'm very sick of hearing my own voice. And also, I can't guarantee any of the 30 were well received, but at least I have the quantity, not the quality. And that really has given me, again, the same themes, a platform. And one of the things my work is really mentoring early career academics in teaching. So I'm trying to give back. I've started a YouTube channel, Biolab Collective. I've also really focused on, again, professional learning and new strategies for ECRs to get a foothold in academia, which is always really hard. It's only getting harder. So I think it's really had a tremendous impact on the work I'm personally interested in, as well as the leverage I'm able to create for the sector, I guess, in promoting teaching and learning.
Excellent. Great to hear that you're giving back to the more junior teachers, and what a great mentor to have, someone, a recipient of the National Teaching Award, to be their mentor. It's also very interesting that you got the award at the time when we're in the middle of COVID, so that would have actually put another spotlight into the work that you're doing. So congratulations, and I have seen and watched many of your videos, Jack, and I've really enjoyed them. So I would say the quality's up there, Jack. So,
thank you.
So thanks a lot. All right, so now I'll go to Blake and Barbara to hear the impact that the award has had on them.
I was just going to say, Jack, just like you, I think we received the award and then we arrived back in Queensland, and the next day got an email saying there'd been a COVID positive case at the award ceremony. And that was the start of the pandemic. So it was I think it's been a bit more of a slow burn in terms of impact because of that, because immediately it happened, everything locked down. We immediately had to flip online. We were teaching a course. It became known to our students we'd won the award, and they were very forthcoming in their feedback about how good they thought we were as online teachers, which wasn't very good. So there was a bit of a reality check that came with COVID, but I think in the longer term it's had some really fantastic benefits, and it's allowed us to engage and teaching and learning with others in a way that wouldn't be possible. So a little bit like Jack. So we do a lot of work with industry, and we've allowed us to sort of engage in some teaching and learning with our industry partners that I don't think otherwise we would have been able to. Blake, do you want to pick up there?
Yeah, first of all, at university, it's opened up a few sort of opportunities to engage in a way we wouldn't have had before in terms of serving on committees and things like that. And it's also, a big part of the reason why I'm now in the Associate Dean academic role and I have another role in the faculty is probably because I won the award. It sort of helps make the case for, why I might be okay in the role. But more broadly, Barbara was mentioning some of our industry partners. So in 2020, shortly after getting the award, we applied for a contract with Queensland Police to redevelop all of their training around how they respond to cases involving allegations of child sexual abuse as a result of the Royal Commission. And so we're currently now about 2 years into that project, and we've rolled out our first statewide training program online. We're about to roll out our second one, and we're now sort of working with the team there in redeveloping some face-to-face training as well. So, it's created all the, and big reason why I think we were successful in that and what they've told us is because the recognition we got for teaching, and that they wanted that expertise to help inform their training as well.
Oh, that's excellent to hear that you're even having an impact outside of the higher education sector. You're training for the Queensland Police. Is that right? The Queensland Police? Yeah, that's pretty significant. So congratulations. Excellent work. Moving over to Kevin. Kevin, what has the impact of the award for you?
Yeah, probably similar with what Blake and Barbara were talking about. So I was a senior lecturer when I won the award, and so the next day I was talking to the VC about teaching and learning without having to go through the 8 levels that would normally possibly be between a person such as myself and a VC. So it does, as Blake sort of suggested, give you some street cred, and in my case, because I'm not in an official teaching and learning position, I can say what I want. So that's been a sort of a liberating thing. I think the other thing for me, it's given me sort of privilege to be able to work with University of Australia, the AAUT awards, which may not have been an opportunity for me otherwise.
Yes, I can see that yourself and Blake are on the Teaching Awards Committee, so thank you for volunteering to do that, or maybe there was a little bit of twisting the arm there, but it's always great to give back. Kevin, have you been giving any sort of seminars around the sort of practice that you've been using in your classroom? I'm sure there's been people saying, well, what's he doing that made him an award?
So actually, probably maybe it's you're not sort of recognised in your own town. More overseas sort of involvement. So with some summer schools in various universities in Germany. So that's been nice. It's I resonate with what Barbara said. It's a bit of a two-edged sword, getting introduced before you've done something as the University Teacher of the Year. For Barbara, for me, I think it was the day or two afterwards, and I gave the worst workshop I've ever given in my life. I was so embarrassed. So I've told people, if you're going to say it at the end, not before. Yeah, but so more sort of some international recognition, I guess, that might have been difficult otherwise.
One thing I learned about, when I went for my award, because I applied for a institution award 3 times. Actually, my students nominated me 3 times, and the first time I said, no, there's no way I'm going to, because we had to write a 15-page dossier. I was a fairly junior academic, and I thought, there's no way I can talk about my teaching over 50. What am I going to say? How can you write about your teaching for 15 pages? And then the second year I got nominated, I thought, oh, okay, well, I must be doing something. What am I doing? And I started to investigate the literature and looked at how the literature was talking about teaching, and really had meetings with my students to try and understand why they would nominate me. What is it that I'm doing that maybe others aren't? And essentially they actually wrote my application. And so the second year I actually had written a draft, but actually didn't submit it, but I actually gave it to the Director of Learning and Teaching and said, look, because I was a level A, I was a tutor at the time, and I said, look, my students have nominated me. I've put together a 15-page dossier under the headings. Could you give me some feedback? And then through that, I got to meet the Director of Learning and Teaching, and he sat down with me and he gave me some really valuable feedback. And the third time when I got nominated, and I only ever put something in if my students nominated me, the third time I felt more confident in what I was going to say. I felt like I had things to say about my teaching. Why was I going for an award? So then I applied for it, and I actually got the Vice Chancellor's Award. And that was the year that the national awards were introduced, and a brochure came around. And so the university then said, well, we had 3 recipients of the institutional award, and they put forward all 3 recipients of the institutional award for a national award. And I thought, oh, there's no way I would ever have a chance in getting a national award, especially given I was lecturer level A. And I knew all the other people that were, applying for awards were associate professor and professor. But lo and behold, I actually won in my category, and I was so excited the fact that I won in my category, not thinking I would get. And back then it was called the Prime Minister's Award for University Teaching. And then finally of the 12, I think, categories there were, they nominated the Prime Minister's Award, and surprised it was me. But, it's been just a really exciting journey. It's not about me today, it's about you guys. And now I want to hear from each of you what tips you can provide to some of the potential applicants that are on the call that are thinking or have started to put together an application. So we will start with Blake this time.
Well, I guess some of the tips would be thinking about what your overall story or narrative is. You know, not just having a collection of evidence. You need to sort of have a plan, you know, a purpose for what you're doing and a way of explaining what that purpose is to a non-expert audience. So, you know, it's not that effective just to list all the great things you've done or, you know, the other ways you've been recognised. You need to actually show, you know, through your narrative, the impact you're having on other people. So I think one of the common pitfalls is writing down the evidence of how good you are versus evidence of the effect of what you're doing on other people.
Thanks, Blake. Yeah, so having that narrative, and it's really important to have that strong narrative, and it's got to be clear. It's got to be clear and it's got to be concise because the assessors have lots of applications to read. So what's special about your application? All right, Barbara, did you want to add some tips as well?
Just in terms of reading the criteria carefully and making sure that you address all components of the criteria and that you use your evidence in the best way that you can to build your argument. So there might be aspects that you don't have direct evidence for, but you can kind of triangulate the evidence you have that points the reader to a obvious conclusion, accepting that you're unlikely to have the perfect measure of the very thing that you want to show. It's like, how can you sort of bring everything that you have together to sort of lead the reader to the conclusion that it's more likely than not that you're correct, that you've met the criteria. I guess the only other thing is making sure you get lots of feedback on your application, but then making sure it remains your application and your voice and your narrative that goes all the way through, because lots of people have lots of advice and some of it will be contradictory. So you have to have a clear vision for what you want your application to be.
True, all good tips. Kevin, have you got anything further to add?
Assessors look for a variety of things. So my tip from my interest is I'm always very keen to see the scholarly aspect of your work. So where you draw your inspiration from, where you draw your pedagogical ideas from. So that's one thing for me. The other is that I like the story, as Blake said, the story arc. But again, that could be just my sort of humanities background. So that's sometimes difficult for people writing from the sciences, perhaps without labelling everyone. And probably the third thing would be make sure you've read some previous applications so that you know the genre and you know the types of evidence that you're going to include, because everyone who applies is a brilliant teacher. That's a given. So you need to go beyond the sort of the set and sex, Kevin's a great teacher, that sort of stuff, to impact from other colleagues in the university, from industry partners, academics from other universities, that sort of thing.
Excellent. So Jack, a couple of tips that you can provide?
Sure thing. So 2 tips. The first one is the criteria to make sure that they're woven together, and there could be a lot of different ways to weave it together, including narrative, but also including the literature, the scholarly literature and the pedagogy, as Kevin pointed out. If it underpins everything you do, then it should come across in your writing. And a lot of applications I've read, it feels like they've run out of steam. They're going to have, enough for three and a half criteria. And I think to fill that gap, often fall back to pedagogy and see what it is that you do that echoes some learning theories that you've been informed by. My second tip is that, for better or worse, COVID can't be the best reason for your teaching innovation anymore. It really has become business as usual. So if that's the center hook of your story, it's not going to stand out as much as it did 12, 18 months ago. So really dig deeper. Don't just look at the surface level of why you had to respond in a different way to COVID, but maybe why that reflects how you were teaching all along, just a different manifestation of what you have to do to adapt.
Yeah, great advice. And Katerina, any tips from you?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with everything that everyone has said. All of that was relevant to my application and my journey as well. The other thing that was probably at the heart of my whole application, which is at the heart of my pedagogy, was a strong metaphor. So my metaphor was the classroom as a metaphorical canoe, because that's the only way to journey across the Pacific, especially from an Indigenous perspective. And when you're dealing with thousands of islands and so many diverse languages and cultures spread across 1/3 of the whole planet, the best way to do this is to go on a journey. And so I always imagine my classrooms as, even if we're static, I give students tools to imagine going on a journey. So that was kind of at the heart. It was harmonized across the whole application. It was at the heart of the narrative, the writing part. It was at the heart of the evidence. So you could see that I taught in regular classrooms, and then I actually took my students out into the Pacific, and we were in the ocean, we were on actual boats, we did all of those things. And then during COVID, we sailed into the digital space. So it was a very consistent and strong metaphor and narrative, which is very, very apt for the Pacific, especially from an Indigenous Pacific perspective. So I think I had that amazing hook that kind of anchored everything, but then you could pull up the anchor and then you could keep going on your journey and come back and go through different kinds of spaces and places and landscapes and oceanscapes and contexts, etc. So once I had that at the heart, and it was very much inspired by my elder sister, who was also a Pacific Studies teacher, and she's now passed away, and she won a national New Zealand teaching award for tertiary teaching as well. I knew this metaphor wasn't just something you pulled randomly just to make something work. Like, it was personal, it was Pacific, it was relevant, it was at the heart of all the pedagogy that I've had going back, 18, 20 years that I've been teaching. So that was strong at the heart. But I have to say the writing part actually was very difficult. So I went through many, many drafts and trying to stay within the word count. Oh my goodness. Like, what do you take out? What do you cut? This was really, really difficult. So it did help to have multiple people reading it, multiple people giving you that feedback and giving you permission to let go of things you cared deeply about, but there just wasn't space in there for it. So to make it really sharp, really succinct, and something I always tell my students, which is, don't repeat yourself, write economically. It's the only time I'll use that term, economically, which is make sure your writing is economic, in that you're using your space as wisely as possible. The last thing I will say is we gathered all kinds of interesting evidence as well. So sometimes people think of evidence in really classical ways, like quantitative and to an extent qualitative, but we cast our net wide, and we got many, many students surprisingly wrote in. They were like, oh, you're going up for a teaching award? 100%. And some wrote like 8 pages. Like, we were like, a couple of paragraphs would be fine. And we just got pages and pages, which gave me the confidence that I was doing the right thing. Because who has time to write 8 pages of feedback on why someone's teaching made a difference in their lives? And when I got that, I was like, oh, okay, I'm doing the right thing. And so I was able to weave some of that content. And I also had international colleagues write in and in support as well, to say her impact isn't just national, it's international as well. So gathering those testimonials from others was really, really important, because it showcased which sorts of stages you're making your impact. So classroom and student and beyond.
Yeah, so just a lot of great tips there, and I'll just try and summarize them as best as I can. But one is, have a hook that you can get the reader engaged in, and have that narrative or that overall story. So you've got to get that right at the start. Make sure you read the criteria, get feedback on your writing, and you are limited to a certain number of words. If we didn't give you any limit, you could just go away and write. It'd take you 2 seconds to do your application, but you've got to construct that story. So that does take time when you're working within word limits. So get the writing, a number of iterations over the writing, embed the scholarly literature to talk about what was your theoretical framework that you were operating on, or using that to support the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. And don't use COVID as your reason to innovate, because now we've been through COVID for 2 years. So what is the change, the ongoing, lasting change that you are making, and the impact it will have? So thank you so much for all of your tips, some great tips. I hope people take some of these away. The next question, I might not ask all of you, I'll just ask 1 or 2 of you. Maybe I'll ask Katerina, because you were the most recent person to write an application. So what were some of the challenges in writing your application and how did you overcome these?
It was definitely time. I'm going to admit and say this was harder than writing an ARC grant or anything else that I have done. And I told my colleagues that because they, research tends to get put up as something more robust and difficult. And I said, no, this application was truly, truly hard, so that when I was successful, the feelings were quite overwhelmed by actually being successful, because I knew how difficult it was to be rigorous and speak to the criteria in a way that works. So it was time. It really was time, because again, I've got children. They have lots of after school activities. I had to carve out time at night or early in the morning or on the weekend, time that sometimes is usually kept for other things. And that was just the commitment that I made to doing a really, really good job for the application. And then, like I said before, it was the writing, in that crafting that narrative that speaks to people across many, many different disciplines, so that you don't have to have insider knowledge of a particular discipline to really get it, was really, really important. So I had probably 3 different people who are also really good writers read it and give me feedback, people whose skill set is in the writing space, because I'm a very visual and choreographic person. So I could make it visually look compelling, but in terms of the writing, I had to get some other eyes on the application. So that was quite challenging, given all the different COVID contexts and times, and the people who were supporting me were also really, really busy. So we really did have to work as a team. I think other people have mentioned that, it was a team effort and not just an individual effort. All of those things were challenging. And then it did make the award really, really something spectacular and special when all of that hard work came to beautiful fruition.
Excellent. I can see all the other recipients nodding their heads saying, yep, there were some challenges that we faced too. Because of time, I'm going to move to the next question. And Jack and Barbara, both of you have been helping us in assessing the award, especially for the last round. So I want to ask both of you, what do you look for in an award application? So start with Barbara and then Jack.
I think evidence to back up a convincing narrative, and as I've already said, sort of multiple forms of evidence. And I really sort of resonated with the point about actively seeking that evidence. Don't wait for it just to come to you. It's unlikely to. You need to go and find it and ask people if they will, either evaluate what you're doing or provide you some feedback. And that's, as I said already, because nothing is perfect. And so you just need lots of different forms of evidence. And I guess that's what I look for in an application. And then also just a well-presented narrative, and it's carefully crafted in simple language, which is not discipline specific. As you just said, it's just, it needs to be understandable to anyone from any discipline. And certainly the applications I've read have all, achieved that. They do come in beautifully crafted, and it's obvious that a lot of work goes into them. But it makes, I think, assessing, it's an incredible privilege to assess these applications, and it's just fantastic to read. But, being able to see what someone else does and the impact it has is just fantastic. So that beautiful, simple, clear communication.
Great, excellent. And Jack, as an assessor,
Yes.
what do you look for?
Yeah, so it's my first time at the national level. So it's, as opposed to what I'm looking for, what I observed, I guess, is maybe more interesting. So the first thing is I observed a lot of people leaning into their discipline. So what I mean by that is they really explain why their discipline is important in the context of why what they're doing is challenging within their discipline, as opposed to trying to make it too non-discipline specific, really letting us understand why the discipline is so valuable. And the second thing is that of the 2 things that Barbara talked about, narrative and evidence, it's funny, I think more people had evidence than they had a good narrative. That was my experience. It seems like the narrative is the harder thing to get right. And if you had managed to figure that bit out, then you probably already had the evidence in the first place to put it together. So it seems like, I don't know which comes first, chicken or the egg, but often if I go looking for the narrative, the evidence is already there. That's what I observed. Yeah.
Excellent. And now I'm going to ask Blake and Kevin, because they are both on the Teaching Awards Committee. I'm going to ask you, what do you look for? What do you observe, have you seen in the applications that have come your way?
That last little bit about, but by the time they've got to Blake and I, the cream of the cream, if we sort of want to put it that way. So then because they're all so good, we're looking for, I guess, or speaking for myself, Blake speak for himself, we're looking for some more sort of specific things. So one for me is that they're creative in some way, that they've been creative over a period of time. So, and this could just be me. My experience on being the committee is we're all interesting people and we've all got different views. So we have some robust discussions about them. So for me, I'm interested in the technology that's being used, but I'm more interested in it's being used in a creative way. So it's not the end itself, it's the means to the end. So yeah, tell us about your technology, but how's it really impacting and has impacted over a long period of time. The other thing for me is to remember that it's a teaching award. So I'm trying to see how this is helping Mark sitting in the third row of your tutorial, or Jane sitting at home in an online lecture. So sometimes we'll get them, I've given 18 international presentations, I've written 3 books. That's all wonderful and really important stuff. I doubt Jack or Mary, if they were the names I used, can't remember, I doubt they've read your books, and they probably weren't at the international conference. So I want you to close the loop for me and say, okay, how's this helping these specific students? So there are a couple of things that I'm looking for, but Blake probably looking for other things, and that's the beauty and the frustration, I suppose, of these awards in some way.
I was just going to say, full of straight up after Kevin there, I was going to agree wholeheartedly. I think what really differentiates, those standout applications is it's not so much about what the person's done themselves. It's about the impact on other people, impact on students and impact more, and on the practices of other people as well. I think if you can make a good case for that, Jack has sort of already talked about the evidence follows, the narrative. I think if you can think about what you're doing in terms of impact, often it's quite easy then to see what evidence you should be looking for to make that case. And really, the standout applications have the narrative, they have a diverse, I'm going to say something contradictory, they have a diverse but coherent set of evidence. So it's not just one type of evidence, but the evidence is all telling the same story. So you're getting you're getting people saying great things about you, but you can point to things you've done. You can point to changes in learners. You can achievement or their performance in courses, but also what they can do after your course as well. And so any creative way you can think of collecting evidence to help make the case, I really encourage you to do that. But really, ultimately, what it comes down to is not just that you do a good job, because like it's been everyone said, if you're applying, you're doing a good job, but can you really show that you've transformed things for people? Have you changed people's experience of the world through your teaching?
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap up now, and what I want from each of you is some encouraging words for aspiring applicants. Katerina, what are some less than 30 seconds, some inspiring words for applicants that are thinking of applying for the Teaching Award?
I would say absolutely go for it. It's worth the journey, and I know it's difficult to know if you'll win or not. And most of us think absolutely not. We're not going to win. But what I loved about it is I learned about myself and I learned about my impact on my students. I actually didn't know the full extent of it until we started getting those paragraphs and pages that were coming in from students. So it made me realize my choice to put my heart and my soul into my teaching first above all other things in terms of my academic career was the right choice. I've always been a passionate teacher, and I know it competes with other kinds of expectations such as research, but I believed in myself even more after getting all that feedback from students. So it was absolutely 100% worth the journey, even if I hadn't won, because I was so humbled by the feedback that I got from students. So it's so worth it, even just to get those stories back from students.
Thank you, Katerina. Jack, what are your words?
So I tell my students that learning is supposed to be hard if you're learning correctly and learning effectively. And I haven't done anything harder as a teacher than this process. So I think that really reinforced how much I learned and how much more effective I am as a teacher. So at the very least, that should be the end game, that we're all trying to become better teachers. Whether we win or not, that's a really, really good outcome no matter the outcome.
Excellent. Blake, what are your inspiring words?
Just to echo some of the thoughts, I think having to wrestle with your own thinking about your teaching and work out how to coherently explain it to yourself, is really important for understanding what you're doing and thinking about, even if you're not successful, it helps inform the way forward for you as well. So I think, there is a lot of sort of personal development you can get in applying. And, maybe if you do apply, you will be successful. And so, I really would encourage you to give it a go. It took us 3 times. So, don't be discouraged. It doesn't mean you're not worthy of recognition. It just means, it's the developmental process and you just might need a little bit more time to work on it.
Excellent. Barbara?
I've got nothing really to add. It's an incredible time to reflect on your practice. It's not without pain in many ways, but I think ultimately it results in you becoming a better teacher and hopefully a better communicator about your practice.
Excellent. And Kevin?
Nothing to add to what's been said, but just to thank people who are here for being wonderful teachers, and good luck with the application.
Thank you. First of all, can you please do a virtual clap for all of our panellists? Thank you so much for sharing your insights, why you applied for the award, the impact it's had, some tips to give the potential applicants, and some of the things that you've observed looking at applications as they're coming in. So I just really wanted to thank you. I'm sure that everyone on this call has benefited from your input. Now, before we all go, I know there's a couple of things that Angeline wants to say. She wants to outline the nomination key dates, and we'll also have a link to other professional development sessions. So we've got a few professional development sessions coming up in the month of June. The next professional development session we have is on the 2nd of June, which is about writing a successful citation application. And Angeline, have we got the speakers lined up for that one?
Yes, we have the speakers lined up for the citations program and teaching. So I'll be sending the promo materials to the ICOs very shortly with the speakers' name on it.
Okay, and also just check my Twitter or LinkedIn. But I just wanted to thank everybody that joined us today, especially the panellists, because I know how busy everybody is. I hope you got some value out of this. Again, big clap to all the panellists that participated, and it's so great to see such brilliant teachers in the country and disseminating their work, and they're allowing thousands of students to learn from their creative and innovative practices. So thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon, and I shall speak to you all soon. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Katerina, Jack, Blake, Barbara, and Kevin. Bye.